next chat is actually near and dear to my heart because we're going to be talking about emerging technologies. What are the technologies that are shaping our world or the world to come? And great powerhouse panel here of women, and we are going to get Nellie Bowles up here. She's the associate editor, tech culture of Recode. I love Recode. And then we have Kim Polese from Clear Street, and she's also a Hall of Fame honoree. And Kara Swisher, the co-CEO of Revere Digital. Come on up. I cannot wait. Put your hands together for this awesome panel.
Hello.
Hey.
Sorry about these glasses. I forgot my other ones, but I'm just trying
They're
to avoid.
Iconic, Kara.
I'm trying to avoid intimacy with you all.
They're perfect. It's great to be here. This is wonderful. I'm really excited. I work for Kara, so this is like only a little bit awkward. And Kim, I really like. So
Thank you. Well, I'm judging you the whole time. So
I know. This is basically a promotion interview. Anyways, I just wanted to start it off super broad and just ask you guys about the state of innovation today.
I'm sorry. Is that me? Sorry.
Is that me? Is that my?
No, it's Kim.
Yikes.
Kim.
Sorry. How about that?
Good.
Okay, good. The state of innovation.
The state of innovation.
Well, I'm almost afraid to breathe here. So obviously, we're surrounded by it. Innovation is thriving. I think the thing that I think about, though, is not everyone is participating in all the benefits of all this thriving technology. So there's a macroeconomic effect. A lot of us are now able to communicate, collaborate much more efficiently. So there's wonderful ways all boats are rising. But on the other hand, a lot of people are actually being left behind. And again, that's a complex issue, the widening divide between have and have-nots, but obviously innovation and the speed of innovation is leaving a lot of people behind. So
I have a little bit different
Yeah.
thought about that. I think that one of the things that we don't sit back and think about enough is the idea of how quickly innovation has happened over the past 20 years, really, essentially.
Yeah.
There's periods in American and world history where just innovation just speeds forward, really in a crazy way. Paper, when paper was invented, or the printing press,
Right.
or things like that. And I think we've been in this period of innovation since the 90s, I guess, or the early 1990s, where things that have happened, we don't even begin to imagine how they were. And one of the things that Kim was, we were just talking about, because we're super old, was, watch it.
Sure.
It's true, though, let's be honest, but, young at heart. But what we were thinking about is going from some of the things Kim did very early at Marimba and other places are just accepted as practice, and then they were just odd and
Yeah.
different. Because Marimba was one of the first cloud companies, but it didn't succeed because either the things weren't in place or people didn't get the concepts. And so what's been happening over this short period of time is really an astonishing thing, and we get so quickly used to it that we think there is no innovation. I mean, just imagine the smartphone, right now. This is a massive computer in your hand. And when 15, 20 years ago, we were talking about Pointcast, which was a company that pushed things to you, went out of business because it pushed it so fast to your computer, and you were on a dial-up modem that you weren't able to get sports scores and news and things like that. And so we sometimes should sit back and just realize how much innovation has happened in a very short period of time, and the impact it's had on culture and society in a way. I always think of my kids who are so used to and live in this world. But we were in Los Angeles, and I've told this story before, and we passed a payphone, which you don't see anymore. You just don't, right? And my kid was like, "What's that?" And I was like, "Well, it's a payphone." And he goes, "Wait, you paid for phones?" And I go, "Well, I pay for your phone, but okay." And he's like, "What do you do with it?" And I said, "Well, you put money in it, and you stood next to it, and then you talked." And it seems so stupid. How stupid were we? Oh my God, we're eating with our hands and hitting animals with rocks or something. And so he literally was like, "That's filthy." And I was like, "Yeah." He goes, "A lot of people use the same phone." I was like, "I'm stopping right now." It was that was it. Anyway, I just think about that. That wasn't very long ago.
That's true.
It's true.
But
We
one,
forget so quickly.
one of the big challenges with innovation is you're always too far ahead as an entrepreneur. I mean, any technologist out there, you can see what eventually will happen, and you want to get there faster, and the rest of the world typically is not ready. And in fact, my first job in the Valley was at an artificial intelligence software company, and we're talking back in the 80s here. So AI is finally kind of coming into its own now, but that's 25 years later. And the thing about Marimba actually was that we were doing something that was radical at the time, which was proactively delivering software updates, remotely managing servers and desktops and mobile devices, and that was really radical to send software rather than waiting, clicking and waiting for it to come to you. But what we did different from Pointcast focused on the consumer side. We realized we could compete against incumbents in the enterprise software side. So companies like IBM, Tivoli, that had the last version of systems management software updating technology. Well, we had a version we had a whole new generation of software made for the internet. Their technology was created before the internet, the commercial internet was available. So we were able to, we could see where we wanted to go eventually, this cloud computing and all the stuff that's happening. But in fact, we were able to build a very successful business competing against the IBMs and CAs of the day, doing enterprise software updating, remote management, data center management.
Which seems really normal.
Seems normal, but it was radical back then.
But I do think we're on the cusp of another big change.
Yeah, I was going to say, is there anything now that seems sort of ahead of its time that may or may not work because of that?
Now?
Yeah.
I think the concepts around sensors right now, two things actually, which one is the sensors, where they're going to be. Like they're going to be everywhere. I mean, I think we're about to enter a really big area of everything being monitored and the data coming in, right? I think you talked about the refrigerators and stuff like that, but it's more than that. It's every part of our world having sensors attached to it so that we bring physical data into the computing paradigm and really get real data about how we're behaving, in traffic and things. Like we just had our conference and I was in the new Google self-driving clown car, which has no steering wheel and no pedals and stuff like that. I think we're really on but I made fun of it and I wanted it to hit the person who invented it and stuff. But what was interesting about it is if you think about the concept of it going forward, it's a big idea. So I think we're on the cusp of some very big ideas around transportation and sensors and physically aware objects that I think is going to radically change things.
Yeah.
The second thing, I think, even though Nellie does not agree with me about this, I think Bitcoin and the currency changes in the financial sector is going to change really drastically and create a really interesting, I think people think of Bitcoin as this quaint, weird thing that strange people play in like it's like a gambling thing, but it's not. The idea of virtual currency is such a big idea that it's going to change the world in a ways that I don't think people realize. And then the third thing that I think that people in this new era of computing is that the focus will finally get off of technology, where it is, which is a very male-centered way to look at it. I hate to say.
Why is it male-centered?
Well, because everyone's, like for example, you didn't get up this morning and say, the electrical grid was sure interesting when I blow-dried my hair. Like you didn't think of the electrical grid, right?
blow-dry my hair.
Well, you might have thought about it.
Can't do a thing with my hair.
But you don't think about it. And so we think too much about the technology of technology versus what it does for us. And
Why
I think
is that male-centric?
because it's about like, I just think the next era of computing is much more, it's not male and female, but it's much more about the result of what's happening versus how it happens. I think we're so fascinated by the actual, how it works. Yeah. Like who cares how a computer works really at this point? And I think that's what's changing. And so then you can create more profound things with the, like what does electricity do? You can talk about the light itself, but you actually, what's more interesting is what the light creates, like that you can read at night, that you can work at night, that you can, all kinds of things.
Yeah, no, that's right. I mean, when I think about that cusp that we're on, it's the integration of computing into everything. Yeah. And biology, just biological systems alone, you look at computational biology and what's going on in that world, and that's how we will cure cancer. Being able to fingerprint diseases and the specific drug combination that an individual needs. There's just that revolution its time has finally come, and that's where so many breakthroughs I think are going to be happening. But it's computation embedded into everything. Right. And
it's useful. I mean, it's useful, and then that creates a whole bunch of businesses around that. How do you bring all this flood of data? Because human beings just don't stop moving. You know what I mean? They just don't. They're just like cockroaches. They move all over the place. And so, nice cockroaches, but still, actually. but I just think it's like, what happens then and what can you imagine? And then in that regard, you were talking about everyone doesn't get brought along. A lot of people do get brought along. Just the cell phone alone, like it has become this smartphone, has such potential when the prices go down so drastically and everybody has them. Like, what could people do with these things?
A lot of people seem to think that the cell phone will equalize us in some way.
Well, it's like it equalizes.
Or like,
yes, because like they just dropped a bunch of tablets off in a small village in Africa, like, and then they didn't tell them anything, and they just came up with all, like, that's the thing, is finding talent everywhere in the world. That's the other thing, is it's really, like, everybody is so constrained by the physicalness of it, but when you can get these really important computational devices to people, you don't know what, I have no idea what they're going to come up with, and I think that's what's exciting about it.
That part of it, I think, that's where the potential is. The thing I worry about is, you know, yes, everyone will have a smartphone to access all these services, but the people who will really benefit will be those who know how to create the new services, who can start companies, who will be, you know, hired by technology companies, and not only technology companies, but all the other companies that use and embed computing and technology. And so what happened, actually, what you talked about, it was really interesting. MIT Media Lab developed this program. They call it child-driven, or it's really student-driven learning, where people are very capable of teaching themselves if you provide enough kind of starting points like education apps, you know, to learn ABCs, math, whatever. So the democratization of the knowledge of computing and computational thinking, that's where I think the needle gets moved. And so I think we can't get enough of those apps quickly enough, or enough cheap tablets in as many hands as possible, so people can start to be their own teacher. We can't scale the kind of knowledge, you know, teaching staff we need. Can't put computer science teachers in every high school, but we can develop apps that help people learn.
But why should, I mean, that's another area, education, absolutely. This is, you know, everyone talks about it in Silicon Valley, like they go to these cocktails, I really think education is important. Mostly they want to just train people to become engineers, which is fine, which is another way to do it.
But probably smart.
Yes, but yeah, well, they need fodder for their fires, whatever. But they, I mean, there's an element to that with this whole coding for girl. I mean, they want people so they can do it. But on a more basic level, when you have, like when you think of your schools, when you watch your kids in schools, they sit in these desks and they stare at the teacher and they mostly memorize. There's not as much project-based learning as there should be. And you go and look at them and you think, why are they at desks? Why are they sitting like that? Why are they reading like that? And once you start to question it, I was at my kid's school and you know, they move the desks around so it's a little more loose because it's San Francisco and they want to have that, like, hey, we're cool kind of thing going on in San Francisco. But I talk out loud a lot. I'm like, sheep. They're just like sheep. It's just like sheep. And the teacher's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, why are they sitting at desks? Why aren't they doing project? Why aren't they doing, like, why are they learning this way? And because most of the world doesn't have that opportunity to have these lovely classrooms, but even our classrooms are prison-like in a weird way, right? You know what I mean? Like they don't. And so how can technology remove that concept from it? Where could there be more collaborative learning across lots of borders and things like that? That I think that we don't think about enough. Like that there's bigger
that everyone
ideas.
tapping on their iPads alone in the classroom will make it more collaborative?
But no, a wall. There's going to be a wall. There's not going to be an iPad. You're not going to have these devices. They're just going to be in the table, like kind of thing. And you'll be like, you know, I was just at Qualcomm, and they were showing me some really cool new things around, they keep going back to the Surface stuff, which I think eventually, I don't know if you remember the Microsoft Surface table. I called it the big-ass computing table. That was my name for it, which Steve Ballmer didn't like. But conceptually, it was the right idea, was that every surface becomes a computing platform. And so you put things down, and then you move things. And you know, one of the things they were doing, which is one of the issues, is power management, because things run out of power. And you know, everyone's always how much time do you spend searching for a plug? I mean, think about the time I used to do other things. I'm just looking for plugs. But one of the things, it's true. Think about it. But they were like, this table, you put down your thing on the table, and then it charges it, right? And they're like, there's some issues of electrocuting children, and they were joking. We'll figure that out. And it was kind of interesting. I don't know, if you spill a drink and, I don't know.
But back to the point about computing and teaching computer science in schools. So, you know, I think many people know the stat, only 1 out of 10 high schools teaches computer science. So you might ask, well, why do all 9 out of 10 need to, the other 9 out of 10? And it's less about necessarily coding. It's more about computational thinking, which means thinking about systems, complex design, collaboration, algorithms. It's the fact that you have to integrate and synthesize so many different pieces of information today and react very quickly. And knowing how to code, knowing what an algorithm is, actually helps you do that no matter what you do, no matter what field you go into.
Totally.
So that's what I think is often lost in the discussion about why we need computer science in schools. Is everyone going to become a coder? Maybe, maybe not. But that there's knowledge that's deeper than just, pounding out code that you're learning.
That's interesting. One question I wanted to ask you guys, and I told Kara she couldn't make a joke answer, was
too bad.
what did you think we would have now that we don't have? Because you guys have both obviously been in the tech industry for a long time. What are you surprised we don't have yet?
Well, I am surprised we're still carrying around bits of plastic and pieces of paper in our wallets. Look at what PayPal's first business model was, sending money between Palm Pilots or something. But, think about how long ago in that first generation they were one of a number of different companies trying to make cash digital. So that still hasn't happened. I mean, there's an entrenched system there. This is back to the point about as much as the entrepreneurs want to change the world, we can't. There's infrastructure oftentimes that stands in the way. So that's one.
Okay.
That's interesting.
Can't make a joke?
No joke.
Jetpack.
Nope.
Jetpack.
Jetpack. Why don't we have a jetpack? Seriously. What? Think about it. A hoverboard?
Fine, okay.
Invisibility cloak?
Ooh,
Time machine.
I like that.
Time machine would be good. When we went out just recently to see, I went with Liz Gaines to see the new Google car that I wasn't expecting, actually. I didn't know that's what they were going to show us. And so they wouldn't tell me what it was. And I get there, and you met by the Google robots people when you show up at Google, and they're all really friendly and drinking kombucha or whatever. And, and there's kale around at all times. And so I got there, and they're like, "Do you know what it is?" And I'm like, "It's a time machine, and I've got to go back and kill Hitler, right?" That's my goal. So I would like that. I would like a space-time continuum thing. But in the absence of that, I think again, the obsession with the device. I'm surprised we're still so tethered to. It's not more pervasive. Computing is not more pervasive everywhere. And I guess I'm just impatient. And we have made these long strides. Nobody does a desktop anymore. We did just do those. And then laptops. Who uses a laptop? I do a lot of my work on my phone. On my tablet, which is
a laptop. I use
what?
a laptop.
I know you do, but I'm just saying less than I used to. But you're retro, Nellie. But it's. I think pervasive computing, where you it recognizes you. I don't know if you saw that Tom Cruise movie, Minority Report.
Yeah.
As I always say, I like to avoid Tom Cruise movies as much as possible, but that's a really. He's in another one, which is the same movie as the one before. I don't know, where he's just mad, and then he's a fighter, and then whatever. So he's in this new. He was in that movie, and I thought what was interesting is when they walked into the mall, and the Gap said, "Oh, Mr." Those eyes that weren't his eyes, and he goes, "Oh, Mr. Tsujimura, you bought fleece last time. Would you like to try on some culottes?" I don't remember, but it was something like that. But that kind of stuff where it's pervasive and it speaks to you. And then the movie, and there's tons of stuff in that movie. You should go watch it. There's a lot of concepts in that movie that are very now. It was way ahead. I think it was Disney's Imagineering was doing a lot of that.
Exactly.
I think some of those concepts in the movie are very important concepts. The second one is, if you guys saw Her, which I didn't think was the greatest movie in the world, but the concept of our relationships with our computers are not quite, they're still very distant. And I think that, I don't want to date my computer at this point, but I
would.
I love, by the way, my iPhone is my best relationship I've ever had. But I think the pervasive-ness, I'm surprised there isn't more.
We're still hunched over our little keyboard.
Exactly, that's right.
And the attempts at pervasive computing we've been resistant to. Like wearables haven't been as successful. And Google Glass, people are very anxious about that.
Well, that's because you look like a douchebag in Google Glass. Think about it.
I thought I looked great in Google Glass.
I know, you did. You tried your hardest. We put Nellie, we put Nellie, because you know when people are getting beat up and stuff, that person sort of made that up, that kind of thing. But so I made Nellie go out to bars for weeks wearing Google Glass to see if she could get hit. That was really my goal.
I did not get hit.
I know.
I tried
was
to
like,
flirt
you didn't
with
get
Google
hit tonight?
Glass.
Sorry. But you know, to see what the reaction was. I think the problem with Google Glass, just in general, is that it's sucking in information and it's not sharing with the world. It's so in your face, so to speak. It's really literally, it's saying, I am from Google and I'm collecting information on you humanoids, which I'll use later to destroy you. Like that's what it says, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Right? And then you're completely undateable wearing them, just completely. That's the second part. So there won't be a human race, which is the Google's secret plan.
Right. I did wear Google Glass. I went out to bars and thought that I thought I could flirt using Google Glass because I was like, we're ready. Tech trends. We've moved to this point.
Yeah.
We have not moved to that point.
She wrote me a text that said, this demon device, I can't flirt in it. It was really funny.
People don't like it.
People don't like it. There's a reason, though. It's a human reaction to it. So I think when you have, like, the Google Glass is a problem because it's just sucking in information, and it really does separate you. I think it's, maybe if it's more in your eye, in the glasses or something like that, I think that's one of the issues. The other thing is it's not, I went on, when they first had Google Glass, nobody had it. There was a Google party I went to on a boat. It was sailing in the San Francisco Bay. It was for Google X people. And everybody on the boat had it, like was wearing it, except me. Like me and the good-looking designers who designed it who were not looking good. And so it was, so they were, literally everyone had the Google Glass on and they were all going, okay, Glass, okay. Like, and then they would turn on other people's glass when they said, okay, Glass, and then everybody was over-talking each other, and it was like a gambling thing. It was horrible. I was like, this is the dystopian future, is everyone talking to themselves and trying to get these things to do what they want, but they didn't do what they wanted. Yeah. And I literally was like, this, and I was stuck on a boat in the San Francisco Bay. And literally, and I was like, oh my God. And then I went over to the shrimp table because it was excellent, and I just ate shrimp the entire time. It's just horrible. And as to wearables, they don't do anything. That's why people don't like them, because steps is not very, they're not actionable. For wearables to really have a point, they have to be actionable. Like, Kara, you really shouldn't have had that cookie today. You should have had the apple instead. You're an idiot. Get up.
Tase you? Like, what?
No, it will talk to you. Yes, it will. It will talk to you. It will. Why is it the steps? What is that? Thank you. I did 10,000 steps. Oh, I did 8 floors. It doesn't have any, there's no actionable information, don't you think?
Yeah. Yeah, you know, Doug Engelbart used to talk about the difference between...
This is the creator of the mouse.
Right. Legend. Since passed away. But he used to talk about the difference between people in the service of computers versus computers in the service of people. And he felt that we kind of got stuck, that we're still at the mercy of our machines, that we're kind of slaves to our machines, and that's the focus, is the machine, to your point earlier. And you know, the mouse was just the beginning. If you read about Doug Engelbart and some of his visions around computing, and Ted Nelson, really fantastical that we haven't even begun to scratch the surface of, because we got kind of stuck, focused on our devices.
Right. I mean, that's what sometimes when I leave speeches, I go, I leave you to your own devices. No, really. That's, you know what I mean? Like, because people are like this, and you do see it. Like, you go to a bar, like everywhere, and I do it too. Everybody does it as this. And I think it has to be eventually this, where people are interacting and using them. But we, you know, they are interesting. They do, you know, again, my 12-year-old, he's always like this with it. And I try really hard. And he's like, well, just a second, I'm looking at something. I said, there's something on there all the time. There's never not something on there that's interesting, and they are interesting. So it's natural that people are interested in them. It's just a question of what will make us look up and use them in a way that is much more environmental versus device-centric. So,
Fair enough.
I think that.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, thank you.
What about, I know we talked a little bit about the finance changes, and you were surprised that we're still using pieces of plastic.
Right.
Tell me a little bit about Bitcoin and where you think.
And what you're doing.
And what you're doing now.
So I'm actually working on a startup company I'm chairman of. It's called Clear Street. And it's focused on this problem of 78% of the population living paycheck to paycheck. The fact is people don't have savings, and there's a lot that has to do with habit and behavior and changing behavior and the way we can use technology and, you know, suggestions to prod people, to prompt people into doing the right thing. So that's what we're doing. We're also partnering with a company that provides an interesting form of safe credit based on a program that was in the military. So it's kind of like remove the obstacles to saving so you can get out of the hole and then start on a path of saving. So we're one of a whole bunch of companies that are out there trying to reinvent the financial system, essentially from the bottom up. It's challenging. I mean, I thought software was hard, but trying to penetrate the world of financial services is really challenging because there's an entrenched infrastructure that just doesn't really want to change. So what does, I think, the key here will be creating these engaging apps that are fun, that actually do start to change behavior, that consumers, that people start to use, and then eventually they become more mainstream and the banks eventually have to change. But there's a business model that works really well, which is charging high interest debt, for high interest fees on credit card debt.
Yeah.
And that supports an industry very well. So there's not a motivation to get people out of that cycle. Anyway, that's one example. Bitcoin, I think, as Kara said earlier, I think it's much more than just a flash in the pan or some sort of weird geeky thing, because what it's doing is, of course, removing great inefficiency. Why should there be all these fees? Why should there be all these delays just to transfer money? It's crazy. There's no real basic cost to that. So the financial system, the financial services industry is not going to reinvent that because the system, they've invested enormous amounts of money and it works really well and it's very pervasive.
Which is why they're trashing it, which is why they trash it and find it funny. I mean, but if you just think about it, I get a little bit crazy on the Bitcoin thing because people, they talk about it the way they used to talk about the early internet. Right. Or Twitter when it first started. I mean, it's sort of, this strange thing off to the right. And
I still talk about it that way.
One time I was talking to a friend of mine, it's still, when I was talking to a friend of mine about Twitter, for example, they're like, I don't get this, people's breakfast. And I was like, and they were like, I don't get why it's pointful. And I said, what's on the internet? And they're like, well, everything. I'm like, well, that's Twitter. What do you care what else is on it? It's just if you can pull usefulness out of it, it doesn't matter what's on it. It doesn't matter. You don't have to explain what's in the library if you find the book you want. And so I think one of the things around Bitcoin is it reminds me of it's the same voices that talk about this. And I was like, they were like, I don't get it. It's unsafe. I said, think about money. Like moving around money is idiotic. Like it's stupid. Like guards, and they move the money and then they put it here and then you get it out here and you never touch cash anymore. Like the whole thing makes no sense if you actually start to think about how we move around money and cash. And then they're like, well, then they compare it to gold, for example. Then they compare it, it's like gold, like the prices go up. Now, you can't carry a piece of very heavy gold around with you and chip off a piece for a Coke. Like you can't go, here you go.
I mean, you could.
You could. You could. I'm not strong enough, but it's just you don't, it's not the same concept. It's so stupid, that you would not want it just all to be virtual. And it's virtual anyway, right? It's already there. It's just in the hold of these people who want to charge interest rates.
Right. How are consumers, people emotionally have a lot of feelings about money, and like what you were just saying. Do you find that they're ready to make that change or make that shift into kind of different kinds of banking?
I do. I think that there has to be an app or a reason, something that is engaging that makes you want to pick it up and start to use it.
And easy.
Right.
That's the difficulty. It's easy.
Yeah.
The time, especially people who don't have means, waste dealing with their finances is crazy. Yeah. You know what I mean? It just is, it's a waste of their time. Just the same way government services, that's another area. Yeah. If you're a single mother and you have a job or 2 jobs or 3 jobs, the idea that you go down to a government agency all day where you don't have babysitting, why not have an app? It's incredible that we waste their time like this. Why not have an app that's easy to engage to get all the benefits you should get, that explains it to you easily? I don't know, they're not doing it because it's easier to live in the system and it keeps people down and it keeps their time down. I don't think they mean to keep people down, but it keeps people down. Yeah. And the same thing with Bitcoin. We live in the United States of America. The dollar is pretty stable for most of our lives. It really is, and it doesn't go back and down. But other countries, are you crazy? Yeah. Just in terms of safety and everything else, the money, fortunes are wiped out on a daily basis because of currency fluctuations in most countries. Now, unless the dollar, which it sort of is, becomes the standard across the world, just the way English sort of has become a little bit. That's the thing.
So maybe the innovation with Bitcoin won't happen in the U.S. first. Maybe we'll be the slow adopters.
We'll be absolutely the slow adopters.
And the people who adopt it first will be outside of the U.S.
Yeah, why wouldn't you? If all the value's in the cell phone, now you don't have to worry about being robbed. You don't have to worry about being, all kinds of things. They take the cell phone, it goes away. You can turn it off. It just makes, one of the things that's problematic here in Silicon Valley is we don't think about how other people live across the world. Most of the world lives in abject poverty. They live in very difficult circumstances. And we don't think about that globally. I think that's one of the things that the U.S. centricness of technology in this country is really still
Yeah.
surprising to me.
Well, this is one area like M-Pesa. If you go to Africa,
Yeah.
they're a lot more
Explain
advanced than we
M-Pesa,
are.
it's really
So
cool.
it's just basically transferring money using your digital, your phone, your smartphone. And this is how people are paid and how they receive goods and
Yeah.
services, and it works beautifully. And there's, every little convenience store you can go reload. It's essentially digital cash,
Yeah.
but it works.
And it's also safer for women, too.
Yes.
I mean, that's one of the things that I think, a lot of the entrepreneurialism, and I think we talk about technology or coding, but I think entrepreneurialism is really
Yeah.
the most important trend
That's
going on, is that everyone has to be entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
And, when Obama or whoever says, oh, well, government's going to create jobs, government's not creating jobs. They're just not. They're going to create the circumstances to create jobs. But now in today's culture, you have to be entrepreneurial. That's how you
Yeah.
succeed. And I don't mean like, hey, I'm going to create a photo app and sell it for $19 billion to Facebook or whatever, which is fine. But it's the idea that you be entrepreneurial. And in these kind of devices open opportunities, especially for women across the world who are in much more difficult circumstances, and women here too, because it enters them into the it frees them in ways that they never had been freed before, and it creates, because there's so much, again, talent. I call it talentism across the world. There are people in Afghanistan that probably have ideas that are better than the ones here, but they can't get them here. So
Yeah.
these devices allow, and frequently, a lot of these new digital currencies are all around. It's fascinating. The loans, all around women-run things, and that's a very powerful group of people that are untapped in the world, and what they can bring to the world is really, they've just been marginalized, and they don't have to become in that way.
Yeah.
So what other trends do you see kind of emerging from outside of Silicon Valley or outside of our little bubble that might surprise us? It's hard.
Well, I'm often thinking about, I don't know if this is emerging from outside of Silicon Valley, but the political system. How is it that so everyone's frustrated, we got a pay-to-play system, right? And yet we've got this phenomenal democratizing technology platform called the internet, and a way for everyone to have a voice equally. So how is it that we haven't been able to crack that nut? When is technology really going to help us create the kind of political system that truly is representative?
Vote for things like Tinder cards?
Yes, yes. I went on Meet the Press. We have a new deal with NBC, so they have to endure me on Meet the Press, and they hate it because I insulted David, that guy. I called him an old fogey, whatever. David Brooks. He was talking about bloggers in pajamas. I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, you know what I mean? Like, and they're like, oh, she just insulted David Brooks. Call out the Washington Guard. So last time I was on, it was voting. I was talking about voting rights. It was the anniversary of the Voting Rights Act. And I said, well, we're not going to go to a polling place. How ridiculous. Not everybody can vote. We're going to vote on our phones. We're doing this. And it was like I said, I'm going to come in and I'm going to take all your clothes and money, and I don't know what, I think I'm going to just, you're done. I'm taking everything. And literally, it was like I had kicked them in the teeth. They're like, no, that's impossible, the voting. I was like, no, why? Why are you doing this? And so the idea that, like, yes, Tinder, the point I was making about Tinder in that particular thing was, why in this day and age, for example, during Obamacare, the fact that the website did not work is insane. Like, and then, you know what I mean? It ruined it didn't ruin it, but it really did bring it back. And the point I was making is that Google works every day, Amazon works every day, even friggin' Tinder works every day, and it's much more complex.
It does, it works great.
By the way, that's complex to hook up all those millennials, you know what I mean? That's big work. But it is, it's hard. You have to locate them. Do I like you? Do I not like you? Whatever. So that was the concept, is that why not have this for politics? And they thought it diminished it, but it's not elevated now.
Yeah.
And so if more people could participate, the elderly, the handicapped, the poor that can't get to the polling places, why wouldn't you do that? Well, it's because they want to hold on to power. Like, really, it's really pretty much that.
And I mean, where does the money go that in politics today is to buy television ads?
Right.
Why are we still, in 2014, still at the mercy of television ads? There's got to be a better way. So that's one of those areas where I just feel like innovation is not quite caught up with what we aspire our political system to be.
Yeah. Other than voting with Tinder, like Kara wants to do.
Right.
I'd like to do that in real life. Wouldn't you like to go swipe left, swipe left. Wouldn't you? Think
I
about
think
it.
you do that in your real life anyway,
Which way is it?
kind
I'm
of.
sorry, which way is it? Right or left? Do you like them? I don't know.
Right is like.
Thank you. Like is right? Thank you.
I don't know why I know this.
Okay, all right. So, so you could do that in life, like, phew.
Kara,
No,
you do that.
I do that in life, but it doesn't work. Nobody moves, so. That'd be cool, like holograms. No, no.
How else could we incorporate tech? What else are you thinking of other than just the voting? If anything, I don't know. I'm just
Wow,
curious.
I mean, I'm 24/7 thinking about all the ways, both I want tech to transform my life and I want it to go away. So here's another one, just being able to turn it off in privacy. You know, when can we escape this constant barrage of incoming? I mean, sometimes I think about 100 years ago, people used to write letters to each other, but maybe they'd write 1 or 2 or 3 letters at the most every day or week. Now we've got to write like 50 letters every day. I mean, emails. But you know, it's just there. It is never ending. How do we turn it off, shut it off? How do we? I don't know if it's escaping technology or using technology
like
in some new
campground
way.
did, like go away for weekends without your phone thing.
Right, but then
No.
I
soon
don't
enough.
think it'll.
Hello.
Do you think that'll actually happen? That we'll learn to turn things off, or do you think we'll just get used to a sort of constant buzz?
I don't know. I think it's everyone's individual. I am very comfortable turning devices off and
Okay.
disconnecting
I get
for
deeply
hours.
anxious.
I know.
I am completely uncomfortable turning them off. I feel as if I love it. It's really weird. I mean, you know what I mean? I don't dislike it. I know people talk about it. Do you know Ariana Huffington? You all know her. Hello, how you doing, darling? So I'm always writing her really. I'm up late at night because I don't sleep. But and so I'll write her a note, and she's like, "What the fuck are you doing up? You need to sleep to thrive, darling." And she goes, and I'm
big
like,
on
"What are you
sleep.
doing up? Why are you online?" Like, you know what I mean? Like, it begs the
she's
question.
sleeping in.
Well, no, it's like I'm 3 in the morning. She's 6 in the morning, but she lives in New York.
She talks a big game
But you know, the
about sleep.
concept of that, we should debate it. I agree. The turning off point. I am not the spokesmodel for that because I don't do it at all. And there's a famous story. I actually was holding my BlackBerry when I was having my baby. But that's another issue. That's TMI. And for individually, I'll tell you what happened, but it got stuck there, and it just went in with me. So that's the way it went. But I think it's
How am I not surprised?
the question. I know. Well, I was texting Walt. So I was actually texting. I was like 4 centimeters, Walt. Again, TMI. For him, too. He was like, stop it. I think one of the things is we have to think about where it's useful and stuff like that. We can make it more efficient and looking up from it. I think the concept of when you're in a group situation, being able to turn it off is hard. It's really because they are so intriguing and interesting. And one of the things we did, we had a conference, a mobile conference in New York, and the date was exactly on the hurricane day, which means we didn't have the conference because it was down in the Battery. And so we had to rush uptown because the conference was obviously canceled. And so we were at some Irish bar that was open. Everyone, you know, when a hurricane, everyone starts drinking immediately. And you feel like, oh, we're in the hurricane, and here we are, gonna rough it in Manhattan. And so we get to the bar, and I made everybody put their cell phones in the middle of the table. Like, did one of those things where I took everybody's cell phones. And it was hard for the first hour. I think everybody was like
You did it for
touchy,
more
like,
than an hour?
Oh, it was all night. I kept them in a bag.
God.
And so it was, and then I was gonna pretend I lost them. Like, sorry.
Too much.
But it was really interesting that people really were, it was like an alcoholism kind of thing. It was weird. It was like the shakes kind of thing. And so I think it is difficult to not put it next to your bed, not to look at it first thing and not to get information. But again, if it's pervasive,
Right.
it might be like, oh, this morning, Kara, you would like to get your ass out of bed. You gotta go to WITI kind of thing. But it would be, if it was pervasive, I think there's ways to do it where, again, we're not looking down on it.
Yeah.
Just to sort of bring it back to this conference and where we are, women in tech, are you surprised by where we are now with women in tech, or do you think we're in a good place? Are we in a worse place than we were 10 years ago? I don't know. What do you think?
I'm
I know some of the
surprised.
numbers are a little bit
Well,
questionable.
So in terms of numbers, when I graduated from college, something like 30% of computer science grads were women. Now it went down to 11 or 12%.
18.
Now it's back to 18. So we're moving in the right direction, but still, I mean, 18%. That's not a good thing.
Some numbers are moving the wrong, like a lot of numbers are moving the wrong direction.
Yeah, and we need to see more women founding and building companies. We have a lot of women inside of the companies, but I want to see women in leadership positions. I want to see women founding and building, $50 billion companies.
Yeah.
That has not changed. And when I founded Marimba, there was all this, kind of ridiculous attention on the fact that I was a woman, and I kept trying to get the attention on the company and the technology and the vision and, the internet and all that. And it was impossible. And I finally gave up, but I thought...
Like the fact that you're a woman and on your looks, it sounds like it was...
It was ridiculous.
Kim was subject to a terrible article in Fortune that was just appalling.
One of many.
One of many, but that was the most appalling.
It was pretty appalling.
Yeah.
But, I kept thinking, okay, 10 years from now, I was very optimistic. 10 years from now, it'll all be different because all these women will be getting into tech, and now we're talking almost 20 years ago. So that part hasn't changed because there's still this focus on, there's too much of a focus on, I don't know, just sort of the stereotypes end up bubbling up, and it's kind of it's pervasive.
It is pervasive. It doesn't change. I mean, Kim was so, at the time it was really fascinating. It was appalling then. It was really appalling then. It was like, she's so pretty. Like, what? Like, she also really smart, like, kind of thing. And so I think that was one of the things, was the focus on you as women, because you were rare. Because that's true. You were rare, as there weren't that many women CEOs then.
Right.
When Marissa Mayer became CEO of Yahoo, I called up Sheryl Sandberg and I said, now you're the third most, Meg Whitman being at HP being one of the more powerful women in tech. I said, now you're the third most powerful woman in tech. And she said, I want to be the 20th. Which I thought was, but that's not going to happen, kind of thing. So I think recently there have been a series of things that have just been depressing, I have to say, in terms of, and I've written about, the Jill Abramson firing, for example, calling her pushy. I wrote a piece called From One Pushy Dame to Another Pushy Dame. The words and language around her was fascinating. And of course, nobody paid attention until it was pointed out, like the words that were being used to describe her, versus Dean Baquet, who's a very nice guy, but he hit a wall with his hand and broke the wall, and his hand presumably. And that was okay because he was mad at her. Like, it was real. I was like, well, didn't he violently hit something? Of course, she's pushy, so get out of her way. That's true. So, I think, and then recently I wrote a piece this weekend because I got sick of it when Katie Cotton, because I wrote on Friday, left. She's the head of Apple Communications, so much more important than PR. She just really led the brand at that company for a long time. It was very important. Not one of the key people there. And when she retired, she wasn't so nice to the press. She just wasn't. She didn't feel like she needed to be friends with the press, and she wasn't all warm and fuzzy. But when she retired, there was a series of articles, I have to say it, all by men, talking about her being witchy witch, evil queen of PR. I pulled all the stories. Dominatrix at one point, frigid, cold, they were such signal words, you know what I mean? Yeah. And they felt comfortable using those to describe her professionalism, which again, I hate to say this, never would have if it was a man. Yeah. It was really interesting. And so I think one of the problems I have is that it's not benign sexism, these are not overtly sexist people. Right. That's the problem. Right. You have some pig saying something like nice boobs or something like, okay, got it, got you, I understand you, get the hell out of here kind of thing. What happens is that it's like, I'm a nice guy, I like women, I'm good to women, I like my sister, you know what I mean? It goes like that, and they actually do. They actually do like women, but there you have it, Twitter has 10 white men on the board. Whoa. Yeah. And then I asked them, well, how did that happen? Oh, I don't know. I don't know how we got to that. I'm like, well, it's mathematically impossible to have 10 white men on the board, isn't it? How did that happen? It's just, Kara, I don't know. That's what I get. And the same thing with Facebook or anywhere else. And so it's just not looking up from your table to say, hey, looky here. And I think Google's recent publication of its stats was fascinating. Thank God they did it, you know what I mean? But still, what did we find? 70% men, 70% white, less than 1% this, and if you go, especially in the technical areas, it was and I was glad they did it. But Google, which tries really hard, was still in a situation. I don't know what the solutions are, but part of it is lifting your head up and saying, hey, you might want to notice what's happening here, because the next year of computing, seems to me, women need to be involved because it will be pervasive. It needs diversity, there's strength everywhere.
Right.
And so I think if you make an argument that it's good for business, I guess that will get it. And we just had Maria Claway at the conference, who's head of Harvey Mudd. You should watch that interview. She's changing the way computer science is taught because it's basically ruled over by this nasty programmer who ruins it for everyone, not just women, but other men who should be in it. And that's the kind of things we have to start doing and pointing out and being strident about. You know, another word, another buzzword for women.
Right. So actually, there's a great intro class at Berkeley, and I think Harvard is offering it now too, and several universities, called The Beauty and Joy of Computing. And I think it's 50% women or more enrolled, and a very large percentage of their freshman class now is taking this. They're not computer science majors, they're English majors, but they're learning and enjoying learning it because it's taught in a different way.
Yeah, or Harvard Business School has this program because they were showing that women sort of started declining grades and numbers all of a sudden, and so they actually noticed that. They're like, oh, hey now, something's happening here. And they created this program which includes, again, you have to include men in it. Like, I have 2 sons. It's important for me to do that. They have this program that's the worst name in history called the Manbassador Program. I don't know if you know that. It's literally like, it's cringing, right? Like, oh, I'm a Manbassador.
I like it.
But I think
It's a great brand.
Yes, it is. But the men help the situation, and they have to. There was a story, a column in the New York Times by Charles Blow about this. Men have to be part of the solution. And be aware of it in a way that nobody feels angry at each other. I think that's really where it has to go.
Yeah.
But it's still a sausage fest, let's be honest. So. and that I will part on that particular. Anything?